Okay, let's begin. 16th of August 2008. Usain Bolt wins gold at the Beijing Olympics by clocking a stunning 9.69 seconds for the 100-meter sprint. You see, the race was a milestone event, and not because Usain Bolt broke a world record. He owned the previous world record as well. It was a milestone event because it challenged us to think, what's even possible? So wherever Usain Bolt went and raced, all eyes were glued onto him. Everybody was interested in what's the next best. And he did better himself in the next year itself, in 2009, wherein he recorded a stupendous 9.58, a record that stands till today. It's been nearly a decade. In fact, it's been more than a decade. 2008 was like 13 years ago. 2009 was like 12 years ago. And Bolt himself has been retired for the past 4 years. So it begs the question, is Bolt really the fastest that we can go? And if not, who's going to be the next Usain Bolt?
It's definitely not me. It's definitely...
Alright, the next Usain Bolt. In order to try and remotely figure it out, we need to first find out what's the fastest that a human can really go. So basically, we need to tackle this question in two halves. We discuss the physical limitations to a human body to better this feat. We attempt to understand the physics and the biomechanics of running, or how good or bad our body is equipped for running. In the second half, we discuss the statistical probability of breaking this record. We deal with the statistical observations of record-breaking events in a length of time using a modified version of the theory of records. So let's start with the physics of running first. If you're anything like me, you probably have been running wrong. If it hasn't been evident yet, I do not run. But anyway, in my very illiterate opinion, I used to think that if somebody had longer legs, they would be able to run faster. But I didn't have to look much further to contradict myself, really. So it kind of got me thinking, how important are strides anyway? So I started rewatching some professional races, and what really stuck with me was just how similar the stride lengths were for all of these professional athletes. And this theory of mine was further confirmed by this guy, Dr. Peter Weyand. Dr. Peter is an expert at running biomechanics, having studied it for decades now. And not only athletes, but almost anybody who was running at their top speed had really similar stride lengths. And if not the strides, what's really distinguishing us from the elites? What's the driving force that really separates us? Well, it's quite literally the driving force. According to Dr. Peter, one of the more critical factors when it comes to running fast is Newton's second law. You see, to accelerate faster, you need to apply more force. And in the case of running, that is the force we push off the ground with. An elite runner is able to push off with significantly higher forces than us mere mortals. And thereby we have significantly lower accelerations, hence we are slower. But there's a biomechanical trade-off that's shared by almost everybody that runs, and that is power delivery. You see, our legs are capable of delivering a lot more power than what it does when we are running. In fact, if you go on and stand on one of your legs and just hop, you are creating more power through your legs than when you're running at your top speed. And that is shared by not just us, but the elites as well. The issue here is the contact time that you have with the ground and how your fast twitch muscle fibers can really deliver power in that small bracket of time. So when you run fast, the contact time with the ground is nearly 1/10 of a second, which is nowhere near enough time for your fast twitch muscle fibers to arrange themselves into a position so that they can deliver the maximum power that they theoretically could. Dr. Peter suggests that this is a problem which is shared by everybody which runs on 2 feet. If we can somehow manage to grow 2 extra set of limbs or start to utilize these two, we may just run faster. Or will we? Okay, yeah, but theoretically we could run faster if we had 4 more limbs. But what could we do as us mere 2-legged people to run the fastest that we can? And obviously the answer lies in emulating what the elites do. It's getting too convenient, isn't it? So let's dissect Usain Bolt's record-breaking sprint in 2009. Here I have a split of his race time for every 10 minutes. From this data, what I really did is that it converted this into a displacement versus time graph, and then derived it into a velocity versus time graph, and then derived it again into an acceleration versus time graph. Neat? Okay. Now if you observe the velocity or the acceleration graph, what you will see is that the race is majorly divided into 2 phases. There is the acceleration phase and the conservation phase. What I really observed while watching the video and side by side comparing with this graph was that for the first 2 seconds, the athletes were relatively lower, with their center of gravity lower, and they were trying to be in their most aerodynamic position. So I'm guessing the force that's the most prominent when they're trying to run faster is probably the drag, and that's why they have to stay lower to just cope with that drag and accelerate through it. Post the acceleration phase, post the first couple of seconds, the velocity remains constant, and that's why I think that this is the conservation phase. Now if you see the graph and the video side by side again, you will see that this is the time where the athletes are as straight as they possibly could be and then just striding forward, and it's interesting to see just how much time they spend in the air. Now I'm guessing that this is because they're trying to minimize the friction that they have off the ground, because obviously friction has a braking effect, so that will obviously decrease any sort of momentum that they're trying to maintain. And that is why when you spend more time off the ground and in the air, you try and conserve the maximum amount of momentum that you possibly can. And this is usually the time when we see Usain Bolt separating out from the rest of the athletes, because he is so much more better at conserving this momentum and maintaining that top speed for much longer. And theoretically, even we can do this if we can just put this into practice. Theoretically. Check. 1, 2, 3, check. 1, 2, 3, check. Okay, so today was my 8th day of training for the 100-meter sprint. Training unsupervised, obviously. What I basically wanted to show was that everything that I've learned, I just wanted to put it into practice and just see if it has any sort of a real life significance. When I started running my 100-meter sprint time on the first day, the one that you saw on the intro was about 15.48 or something like that. It's a little inaccurate. Today, by the same type of instruments used, I have recorded 14.16, which is not my best. The thing was that I nearly gained 1.30 seconds, because the first time that I ran, I had really tight shots and I couldn't get my knees high up. So it's important to get your knees high up so that when you push down hard. Please don't take this very seriously. Secondly, I think what I did was that I realized through some footage that I was landing on this part is called, I used to land on this a lot, and I did not have a lot of contact with the ground in that sense, and I was not able to accelerate faster. So what I did to counter that was that I started doing a few drills with like high knee raises and just like focusing on just landing with a flat foot so that I can apply more pressure with a higher contact area. Yeah, I think those two were probably the most significant changes that I made, which really got me in like a second quicker in 7 days, which is, I don't know, maybe good, maybe bad, I don't know, but it felt pretty nice. I don't think I've ran faster, or I don't think I've run with a better form than I have in the last 3 days at least, when I really started focusing on my form. Yeah, I think the biomechanics work. It kind of checks out, at least with me. That's it. 7 days of running. Wait, 8 days of running? I don't know, man. My mind doesn't work much when I'm on the ground, obviously. Anyway, let's continue the video. Where were we? Statistics. Right. That's more of my comfort zone. After Bolt's efforts in 2008 and 9, a lot of research went into just figuring out what's the limitation of the human race in terms of how fast they could really be. And not just biomechanical research, but research based on how records happen and what's the pattern behind it, and generally the statistic behind when and why a record will happen. Dr. Newberry studied the records in 100-meter races spanning across 1912 and 2009, and what he found was rather interesting. Dr. Newberry utilized a modified version of the theory of records to make his predictions and divided his computations into 2 sets. For the first set, he omitted the 2 big Usain Bolt records files, utilizing all the other race records between 1912 and 2009. He then calculated an ultimate record interval to define the limits of the theoretical time humans can achieve, which came out to be this. Interestingly, the lower limit of this interval is already bettered by Usain Bolt's 9.58 world record. Speaking of which, let's bring back Bolt into the equation as well. So now we do this exact same calculations by including the 2 big Usain Bolt records. I am changing the pronunciation of records every single time. I did it again. What the fuck is happening? I don't know. So we bring back 9.58 and 9.69 and then calculate this new ultimate record interval. And this new interval then comes out to be this. 9.40 and 9.58. That is a staggering number. Interestingly enough, Usain Bolt himself predicted that the human limit would be 9.40. But is it really? Before May 6, 1954, no human was supposed to run a mile in under 4 minutes. But then a certain Roger Bannister recorded a mile in 3 minutes 59 seconds, 0.4. Today, over 1,400 athletes have officially achieved that. For the longest of times, a sub-2-hour marathon was deemed impossible. Until October of 2019, when Eliud Kipchoge claimed a remarkable 1 hour 59 minutes and 40 seconds. In an interview afterwards, he even said that now, since he had done it, he expects others to do it as well. But perhaps the most remarkable story about the human limit has no records or medals attached to it. It was the first female Olympic marathon at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. First, because the Olympic Committee of the previous events thought that women's long-distance racing would not be that eventful, deeming women incapable of running long distances. And with the humidity scaling up to 95% that day, running a marathon was about as tough as it could get. The race did have a winner, but the real milestone event happened 20 minutes later. A 39-year-old Gabriella Anderson-Chais entered the stadium for her final lap, limping her way through, rather on the blink of collapse.
You know, you wanted to show that it was the right decision for the Olympic Committee to let women run the distance.
But with every step that she took, the crowd realized that they were witnessing something special as well, as they cheered her on till the finish line. On that day, Gabriella truly showcased what the true human limit really is.
People kind of identify with you, and because they see the struggle and they see that if you really set your mind to it, you can overcome a lot of obstacles. So
it's a paradox, and it's made up of a resilient spirit that just enables us to take the next step. That's it for the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Alright, the next Usain Bolt. In order to find and to figure that out, we need to divide. In order to fuck.